Hey everybody, this is Emmy Thomas. I'm here again with Juliet Tango. Juliet Tango, I'm going to ask you the same question I ask everyone, which is what is it like to be you?
I hate that question. That's what you meant by the same question.
Yep.
Um, it's okay to be me. It's okay. I just don't have a very good answer for that. It's not an easy question. It's the worst question. I'm sorry.
No, no problem. Is it like
What's
not
it
an
like to
e
be you?
Yeah, what is it like to be me? I mean,
Uh-huh.
well, I think that like I mostly think of my bodily symptoms when people ask me that question. Like I
Uh-huh.
think, "Oh, did I have good sleep?" Am I
Okay.
hungry? Am I feeling kind of peckish or something? That's usually what I think about. I get or just stats about me like, "Oh, I need 10 hours of sleep." Like I work best in the afternoons, in the mornings. I'm just basically kind of like taking care of administrative things. Like I love baths.
Okay. I see what you mean. I feel like I could answer the question better knowing that, but
Uh,
um, what it's like to be me is usually I mean, me right now is a little different, but what it's usually like to be me is kind of like I've mentioned this before, kind of like a placid lake or
mm-hmm.
like a glassy surface. It is like just calm and like undisturbed. That's how I normally feel, I would say. And then, there's lots of little ripples here. Maybe someone throws a stone in and there's ripples, but like otherwise, it's just kind of like a placid lake. It's kind of peaceful and like a deep, peaceful sense. But I have had a couple years where it has not been the case. So I feel like that is
Mm-hmm.
kind of a lie to say that's what I'm like now. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting back to kind of being closer to that, which is what I like. I do, that's how I've been for a long time, and that's what I like. That
So
placid lake feel.
yeah, that's nice. So you what do you think disrupted the Placid Lake feel, and what do you think has helped it to come back a little bit?
Well, I have been, well, I feel like what caused this is actually something that's kind of like luring or lying in wait um, in me, and I think it's limerence. I think I'm a little bit limerent. I think I'm not like extremely limerent because I've read a lot of things where people are having like severe symptoms, but I feel like I'm a little bit limerent, and so I feel like that's something that I am, and it's a word I never heard before. I just kind of heard it one day on YouTube, and so I feel like it's kind of almost almost like borderline e kind of symptoms, like a little bit, like or an attachment disorder. I kind of always felt like I had like an attachment, a bad attachment style, I guess. Kind of like more anxious attachment. So I guess that's kind of what I kind of started reading about, and then I discovered limerence through that. And I mean, limerence is kind of like I feel like it's kind of like unrequited love, kind of that kind of a feeling. But also combined with that is like the people who are very limerent, they also will like see someone one time and then they will have this limerent feeling for like 10 years or something
Mm.
crazy. And they'll feel very attached to this person that they don't know. Um, and yeah, it can be very strange. They'll be waiting for their text for literally years for this person they met on like a cruise or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I don't have that same issue because the person I'm in limerence with, they call him a limerent object. I
Mm.
My limerent object is actually someone I know well. He's a friend of mine, and so I don't feel like it's like a stranger. I don't feel like it's fake like that, like that. But I do feel like there's just some limerent tendencies, and so that is what has just disrupted my usual calm self and made me kind of just stressed out for 2 years.
Really, for 2 years?
Yeah, or more, probably 3 years, honestly.
Wow. Okay,
Um,
let's
and that's something I've
go
noticed
ahead.
about myself too, is that like when I do get attached to someone, like the attachment is pretty strong and it like stays, it doesn't go away. Like it's always kind of there. And so maybe that's a good thing if you have a healthy relationship with someone.
Hmm.
But when you're not in an actual relationship, I think it's just painful.
Yeah. Wow, this is interesting. So, can we back up a little bit and then get back to limerence? You said something about
Sure.
an anxious attachment style, and I don't know what that means.
Well, yeah, usually there's people, I mean, usually they divide into like four different categories. I think there's like healthy attachment, which is kind of boring. It's like what you would want to be, but it's kind of boring. It's just healthy. Um, then there's like anxious preoccupied, which is kind of like anxiety and like maybe you're constantly wanting to know where they are or like reach out to them or get a message from them or need some kind of validation.
Mm.
And then there is avoidant, which is more like you push them away. You're getting attached to someone, you kind of push them away or you fuck it up. You
Mm.
try to mess it up on purpose, kind of, or push them away in some way. There's that kind of attachment. Um, I don't remember what the other one is, but I think there's four. But
Okay. I like
healthy,
that. I like it when there's four things. It's like
yeah, I don't
nice.
remember what the other ones are. You'll have to just Google.
All right. I'm
um,
thinking
but
about it
it's
and
a
I'm like, oh, I don't know if I have any of those. So maybe I'm the fourth.
you might be just the healthy one, which would be
Yeah.
great.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty boring. Nothing really to say. It's
Uh-huh.
just kind of normal. Um, but I don't really know what that looks like, to be honest. I don't really know. But I mean, it kind of just seems like there's nothing really to say. Like it's just healthy. It's, there's nothing really to say about it. It's not very interesting, but it's probably the healthiest, best way to be.
Yeah.
Um, but the attachment, some people call it a disorder, attachment disorder, or attachment style. I think attachment style is probably better because there's no truly right way to be. But a lot of people, something small in their childhood might cause them to have like if you're abandonment, and that'll come out as like a, which I think is kind of what happened to me a little.
Mm.
I kind of feel like I have the attachment style I do because of maybe something that happened in my childhood, just kind of that for me as a 3-year-old was traumatic, but really wasn't that big of a deal. My grandparents were my primary caretaker, and my parents had kind of an issue with them at a time and stopped talking for a little while.
Oh
And so I
no.
feel like that was pretty traumatic for me, even though they might not have realized that, oh, that would have lasting effects. You know, you can always screw up your child without realizing it.
I know. Yeah. It's interesting too. I think when grandparents are the primary caretaker, there's almost like less of a script for everybody to follow. Like everybody
Hmm.
understands, oh, yeah, of course your mom is important, and if that gets
Yeah.
disrupted or whatever. But I think people feel less like like there's just more unknown maybe about in what ways can you kind of disrupt that grandparent grandchild relationship when you're a
And I feel
primary
like it's
caretaker.
very common. Yeah, and especially in other cultures, like, the grandparents are at home or like all live in the same house. And so I feel like, the grandparents just kind of take care of the younger kids while the parents are more working.
Yeah.
That happens in a lot of cultures.
Mm-hmm.
And also here in America, I mean, people can't afford daycare all the time. If they can have a family member watch a child, that's a lot cheaper. And then also the child kind of gets attached to that person maybe a little more. Because for me, it was like my parents were just kind of watching me at night, when I'm sleeping. So I don't have a lot of time to bond with them when I'm sleeping. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that happened, and I think it's kind of painful for my parents too at the time because I mean I know one time I like said that my dad wasn't, you're not my real dad or whatever, kind of said some comment like that, which can be hurtful to a parent as well,
Yeah.
So I feel like not wanting to go home with them when they come to pick me up because I'm wanting to stay there and just have fun, and I feel like they were kind of spoiled me probably,
Yeah.
and so you kind of get attached to your grandparents if they're taking care of you. So anyway, that's kind of what happened to me. And my aunt, who did have borderline personality disorder and maybe many other issues, she was on drugs, I think, when I was a kid. And she's always lived with my grandparents. She's deceased now, but she was just a little crazy. And so one time I think she was maybe jealous of me as a child, that my grandparents were giving me attention or that I was there and not, they weren't waiting on her hand and foot like they usually do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just feel like she was jealous and made a threat to kill me. Um, and so that's what instigated my parents taking me out of their house because they
Oh,
wouldn't even believe that the message was her. But
yeah.
you could tell it was her whispering on the phone that she was going to kill me. She's probably on drugs at the time, and or having one of her episodes, whether she was bipolar or she was just um, borderline and kind of having one of her episodes with that. I'm not sure what her true issues were or if they ever found out, but that was one of them at least, was for sure borderline. Anyway, that's
So
what I
she left
think.
like a phone message or something being like, I'm gonna kill Joey
Yeah.
at Tango.
Yes, that's exactly what she said.
Wow.
She said something like that on a recording, on my parents' voicemail. Who knows? Maybe she was just doing it as like a joke because she was annoyed with me.
Mm.
Maybe she did it because she was serious. I don't know, but I mean, she's always been a little unstable. So, I mean, I think my parents did the responsible thing and took me away from my grandparents, especially since they weren't taking it seriously.
Oh, that's
Um,
hard.
yeah, so that's what I think really kind of screwed me up a little. But um, now I have to look forward to this limerence and the anxious attachment style.
Yeah. So okay, yeah, and I can kind of see now the connection. You had this attachment to your grandparents, you were taken away from them, and now you have this anxious attachment style. So the and limerence I've heard before. Now I remember this from like maybe like I don't know, freshman college English class or something. Like limerence like is a word like in literature, I guess, to reference this like beginning stage of like falling in love or something, right? Does that sound
Yes,
right?
yes, that is what it is. It's kind of like you get stuck in that, I feel like. That's what I
Okay.
feel like it is. I feel like everyone, and it's hard to say where like something becomes pathological and when it's like normal, because
Mm,
I mean, a lot of things are different. Like people experience emotions and they're like, they feel things in the beginning of a relationship that isn't normal. And but if you were stuck in that, I think that's kind of what limerence is. I think it's kind of like kind of being stuck in that state
mm,
and making poor choices because of it.
yeah. Yeah, I
But
totally relate to this. I think maybe I've even told, and then I don't mean to cut you off, but
no, go ahead.
maybe I've told this story before about how I had this uh, law school classmate of mine, and it didn't start during law school. That would be the normal thing, right? It started
Yeah.
after law school. And it came out of nowhere. And I was like, this is so weird. Like, why am I like borderline obsessed with this woman? And it was so weird too because I would like try to mostly like not pay attention to it like kind of like this
Mhm.
is like just like an annoying kind of weird thing. It didn't make any sense. It didn't even feel like I had a crush on her per se or whatever, but just like a real like interest, like a really strong interest. And so I'd look up
Yeah.
like I'd Google not Google, I'd search in my Gmail or whatever, and I found emails between us, like that I don't even remember. Like we had a full on side project that we were doing together. And I just don't remember participating in that with her at all. That's how bad it was, where I was like, man, this is so weird. Like, this is obviously not at all connected to her because I don't even remember her accurately, from law
Yeah.
school. And then it was like 2 years of it, and then just like as quickly as it started or whatever, it like went away. And that's not the first time that I've had like experience like that. It doesn't happen all the time, but maybe once every 5 years or something, 5 to 10 years, I'll have like
Yeah.
another
For me,
weird
I feel like it's
thing like
every
that.
10 years,
Interesting.
like a weird cycle. And also, another thing that people with limerence, apparently, I've read about them doing is that I don't do this, but I think other people do, is that it's almost not even the person that they're in love with or whatever. It's not even about that person. It's kind of like they just use them as an overlay, or they have like an overlay of like things they put on that person. So like they have this person who's a real person, but they kind of make up, you know, in their mind what they want that person to be,
Yeah.
and they kind of ignore the actual person,
Mm-hmm.
and they in lieu of like their imaginary version of that person.
Yeah.
So it's not even like they're really getting to know that person. They don't even want to know maybe that person. They want to not know anything about them so it doesn't shatter um their imagination of what that person is to them.
Interesting. But for me, at least, when I experience it, I almost like to find out the new data about them because it
Yeah,
helps
me
me like
too.
stay grounded in reality, where I'm like, see, you didn't know that, like
Hmm.
to myself, like you don't know anything about this person. Like this is not based in reality at all. This is like some weird, like cokehead fantasy. If I was like a cokehead or something, where it's just like your brain's just misfiring. That's how I always interpreted it. But it's so weird to be experiencing it because you're like, butterflies, Twitter pated, just like they like reply back to, one of your posts on social media or something. You're like,
Yeah, I feel like it's a confusing state to be in. And if you're limerent, I feel like it's even more confusing because I feel like a lot of them are out of touch with reality
hmm,
and they're kind of stuck in a fantasy more than reality. I don't feel like I have that part of it. I really don't. Like I don't feel like anything I've thought about the person is not true. I mean I pretty much, I know them as a friend. I feel like my friendship with them is really good. But a lot of times for someone who has a limerent object, they say to just to cut contact completely and just totally cut them out, which
hmm,
I don't want to do that. But recently, I feel like I've also heard people say, I don't know if it's true, but like you kind of find people your based on your own wounds, kind of like emotional wounds, or like I don't know if that's true, but that's something I've heard at least before that like the people you find based on you kind of have similar psychological wounds, perhaps.
hmm,
I don't know if it's true, but that's what I've heard. Um, that might make a little bit of sense because my friend also is estranged from his parents, so he has some kind of a issue there, and so I feel like sometimes there might be an abandonment complex or something there,
hmm,
and so anyway, when I suggested to him that we just maybe talk a little bit less, because I've noticed when I go on a vacation and come back, I kind of am in a funk and I don't want to go right back to having conversations because we usually talk to each other on the phone for many hours. We're both truck drivers, and so
oh,
we're both able to have a lot of free time to talk. But I don't like when I'm on vacation, I feel like I'm saturated with distractions and I'm like doing fun things and I totally forget about the attachment, kind of wanes a little bit. And then when I come back, he's wanting to talk on the phone right away, and I'm kind of wanting a little break from that. Like I just had a vacation, but I also want like now, like a little more time to just kind of get used to being to feeling again, kind of almost. And so the last time I just suggested that maybe we could talk on the phone a little less, and he got really offended. And so then we stopped talking for a little while, but we were still messaging each other. We just weren't talking on the phone.
yeah,
And so um, I do feel better not talking on the phone, and I feel like that's hurtful to him
yeah,
to say that, even though it's not. It's not. I mean, to me, it's not hurtful. It's the opposite. um, and I would talk on the phone again. I will. I will probably in the future, but I just feel like right now I need this break, and it could go for a year. I don't mind.
yeah. Huh. That's
But
interesting.
I feel a lot more calm now. A lot of my stress seems to have gone away.
I like that development. Does your friend know that you have like this limerence,
Yeah, but we talk
you know?
about everything. I mean, yeah, I've not ever like hidden anything from him. So I mean, he knows that I don't think he really quite understands it, and I honestly probably don't either. But I also don't really fit the, description of the which what I read online is like the worst case scenarios, usually people who went on a cruise once and met this person and they've been literally waiting for them for 7 years or something. And
Hmm.
it's like, oh, that's deep, deep into denial or into the fantasy or whatever that is. I don't have
Yeah.
that part of it, but I definitely like experience some of the other symptoms. I guess it can also be quite consuming, like thoughts about them. Like can be, you have a lot of thoughts, just like scenarios maybe in your head, or just wondering about the future or like what you could do. Like I always think about trips. I like trips and vacations and stuff. Um, but just always planning kind of to do fun things with them. I don't think that's really necessarily pathological, but it can be, I suppose, if it takes up all your time.
Yeah. And do you feel like there's like a compulsivity to these thoughts?
Yeah,
Like,
I do. I feel like they're compulsive and that they are, just like if I'm driving and I'm watch or I don't really watch something, but if I'm listening to something on YouTube while I'm driving, I might find my mind wandering back to wondering about my friend and what he's doing, or like what he's if he wants to go on a trip, or planning in my head these things about that person, which
mm,
is kind of, I don't know, it can be taxing, I suppose. It's
yeah,
also kind of fun in a way. It's an addiction, really, is what it is. It's really an
yeah,
addiction.
it does. It sounds like that. It sounds like kind of and well, I maybe it's better to ask you this. Is there like an element of escapism to it?
I don't feel like it's escapism. I think that might be for some. I don't feel like I'm escaping anything by this addiction to this person. It's really an addiction to a person, I feel like is what it is.
Hmm.
And
And it would be hard for you to give this up completely or whatever because why?
I mean, I'm also just, I mean, if you were like essentially like in love with someone, or like kind of those feelings, like it's hard to just be like, absolutely not. I'm going to turn my back on these feelings that are really strong,
Mm-hmm.
and that, like, it's hard to do. But I feel like it is helpful for me to just kind of limit, and that's what I was trying to do when I came back from my vacation this last time. I was thinking, I would like to kind of, my point of reducing our contact was to be able to like kind of notice my attachment waxing and waning,
Mm.
instead of me going on a week or two vacation and then coming back and being thrown into it and feeling all these kind of anxiety emotions.
Yeah.
If I could just like have, maybe we talk 3 days a week, and then after those 3 days we don't talk, and then we come back the next week and I talk 3 days, I can kind of more. I was trying to maybe like
Mm-hmm.
eh, feel those things more, um, in a controlled way, I guess, to kind of better understand them.
Yeah, and I love that. Like I love that thought for you of just kind of being like a little bit more perceiving of like not I always think one nice thing about taking a break from anything is that you can come back with a little bit of fresh eyes or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, also, you talk about intuition. I've had some intuition in the past as well. And it just told me to run away. So, I mean, that's just literally what I felt like. I felt like I needed to run away. And um, that was a long time in the past. And so I didn't want to not listen to myself, but I didn't want to do what it was saying either, because it was
Mm,
kind of a silly thing to say for like my best friend. Why would I want to run away? But I did decide that I wasn't going to call him anymore. Just, you call me, when you're free, and maybe we'll just kind of reduce our amount of time that we talk on the phone. I don't know, but it was definitely something that I just felt intuitively that I should reduce the amount of time I speak to this person, and maybe even run away from that person,
yeah.
even though there's no reason why I would think that. I do always enjoy spending time with them, maybe too much.
Yeah. Yeah,
So that's what I've been doing lately.
that's hard. One thing, so I was telling you earlier about how I went to a camp for bassists, not base camp
Hmm.
for climbing mountains.
Yeah.
Like a day camp for people who play bass or whatever. And one of the interesting things that we did every after lunch, we did like an hour-long movement class. So it was yoga twice and Feldenkrais. Have you ever heard of that?
No, what is that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I should probably have looked at the Wikipedia on this or something because the woman who taught it was very free thinking. And she was like, rather than lecture you about what Feldenkrais is, let's just do it or whatever. But it
Okay.
seemed, yeah, it seemed to be focused, and I've heard of it before with musicians. I believe that this is a relatively accurate thing based on my own experiences, but this is like if you're interested more or whatever, people listening, then just look up the Wikipedia. But it's about trying to kind of be more aware of your movement And instead of just kind of walking, like the way that you do normally without ever kind of thinking about things, to kind of like be aware of what parts of your body are moving and what parts aren't moving, and like some of just your body's like predilections, like
Hmm.
it loves to move this way, and some of its resistances. Like it doesn't like to move this way. And kind of some of the stuff makes sense. You're like, okay, the wrist cannot bend, this way, like only so much or whatever, like much less than it can bend this way, or it can go back not as much as it can go forward or whatever else it is. But some of it too, like one of the comments she made was we were like on our backs on the ground, and we were doing like these exercises that she didn't tell us what we were doing ahead of time. She just told us afterwards, like, and can you feel that your pelvis is more independently moving than it was before? And then you'd be like, wow, yes. Like,
Yeah.
and I'd be like, I have never once thought about my pelvis. And I have never, especially, thought about it being this independent, like moving thing. And then afterwards, it was like one of these things where you like can't unsee it. Like as
Yeah.
I was walking and then like, kind of like letting my pelvis just float or move the way that it wanted to. It was just so weird to like experience things kind of like in this different way.
To be aware of
Uh
them when you
yeah.
just ignored them in the before.
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
done some walking
exactly.
meditation,
Hmm.
like at Zen Buddhist little groups that I've been in before. We do like meditation where we sit and then like halfway through or something, we do like a walking meditation.
Mm.
And so that was kind of interesting too, feeling the way your feet hit the ground and, all your different bones as you kind of slowly walk.
Yeah,
That was maybe it's something kind of a little like that.
yeah. Yeah, but that's what I was thinking when you were saying like on vacation, you kind of take this like step back or whatever. And then if I were to just go from like Feldenkrais to just back to, now I'm back, base camp is done and I'm I'm just going back to my normally scheduled programming. It's like what was the point of any of it? You know? So
Yeah.
it makes me a little sad that your friend was sad about it. But I think that sounds right to me. What you chose there.
I think it was the right choice. I feel bad and I understand why I chose bad timing. He was talking to me about some friends. He's been making new friends in the city he lives in,
Yeah.
and it just kind of turns out that a lot of the friends he's made are not the best, or they're just kind of like flaky.
Mm,
And so he was kind of telling me about that. But in my mind, I was like, oh, he's making new friends. He also has a friend who's coming to live with him from another country soon. So I was kind of like, this is a good time for me to propose like a slight change,
mm,
just because he's going to be distracted by his friend being there, and he also is making new friends and acquaintances in town. So I feel like now's a good time to ask if he'd be open to this. But it just so happened that he was really telling me about I probably should have been listening even better, but he was telling me more about like how he was disappointed in the friends that he'd been making.
mm,
So then when I asked for it, it was kind of like I was kind of rubbing salt in the wound, almost like kind of wanting to distance myself when he's already having problems making friends, kind of.
thank
So I mean, I probably shouldn't have chose that time to ask for that, but I think he was a little triggered
yeah.
and just got upset and didn't want to talk on the phone for a while just because he was upset with me. But I mean, I do think it's better for me to just have a little more distance. And a lot of the recommendation from everyone I've read online is to have no contact, which I think is extreme. And I don't have an extreme version of limerence, but I do have like at least some limerence. And it is something that is stressful for me. I don't really always realize it until it's not there, but there is kind of like always a baseline anxiety um, that I just get used to.
Huh.
And so I feel like that is better now. I feel like I'm not addicted to sugar as much, which is weird, but I think I maybe have like been stress eating sugar. Um, kind of those kind of things. Just I don't know.
Yeah. Can I ask you a little bit of a sensitive question about
Sure.
when you suggested to your friend to stop talking for a while or talk less?
Mhm.
Do you think
Yeah.
that, or what role do you think that anxiety played, if at all, in your decision to tell him then?
I don't know in that moment, like, I mean, I feel like I'd been thinking about this for a week and I'd wanted to tell him because I feel like our conversations hadn't been as good. I feel like I've been kind of um a little agitated.
Hmm.
And so I don't know per se that anxiety then, but afterwards, after he was angry with me, like I definitely had a lot of anxiety. Um, but I don't know if it played a role in that moment. Maybe I was a little anxious, just like, oh, this is a good time. Let's tell him now, ask now. He's talking about like meeting new people and like his friend coming. So like now's a good time to ask for, a little change in the way we talk.
Yeah. Yeah, because if that were me, kind of like putting myself in your shoes, if I
Hmm.
might have felt anxiety in a couple different ways. Number one, like I feel like I want to talk less or something, and I'm a little nervous about mentioning it, or how to communicate, how or when to
Well,
communicate
for
it.
sure I was.
Yeah. And the second way that I might have felt a little bit of anxiety is it sounds like this person's moving on in a way, or they're going to have less
Yeah, that's
time for
kind of how
me.
I felt.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I felt. Yeah. That's more what brought it out is that I kind of felt like, oh, this is a good moment to try to kind of like, and that's what I've tried to do in the past is kind of like, because normal friendships kind of have and I especially do this, where I kind of cycle through my friends. But a lot of friendships, you kind of pick them up and put them back down. I don't know if that's normal, but that's what I do. And so I'll kind of cycle through my friends. I have like a friend I hang out with exclusively for like a couple weeks, and then I move on to the next friend. Just something I kind of do. I've noticed about myself. And I don't think that's unhealthy, but it's just something I've done.
Yeah.
And with this friendship, I kind of feel like we don't ever take a break and it's always on, on, on. And so it's not that I get tired of them because I don't, but
Hmm.
it's just kind of like, um, and also I guess the fact that it's not really going anywhere, like we're just friends. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it is a lot for something I can't quite get what I want or need out of it for
Hmm.
myself. So I kind of do feel like that's a component as well. Maybe it's something that causes anxiety
Yeah.
is not being able to get what I need from
And
that friendship.
is it okay to ask you, and feel free to decline or whatever, but like,
Sure.
yeah, what are the things that you want or need that you can't get from this particular relationship?
I really feel like if I could get like if it could be a real relationship, I feel like I would actually be able to probably cure a lot of the issues I have with attachment. I really
Mm,
feel like that's something that I could achieve on my
interesting.
own or with therapy. I really do feel like I could mend that. I don't feel like I can get that because I'm not sure what commitment or I don't feel secure enough to do that. It doesn't, it's not a safe enough place for me without that
Huh.
for me to actually get what I need. Um, but I do feel like that's something that could happen if I were able to have an actual relationship with someone. In some point in the future, I'm sure I could like heal my attachment issues through you know, just understanding that this person is there and that, maybe it's not forever, but like for right now, this person is there and I can feel safe and, I just feel like healing happens when you're in a secure environment.
Yeah.
It was the insecure environment before that made it bad. So I really do feel like, and I have worked on myself quite a bit during my time knowing him and just feeling things because I don't normally. That's another thing too. Because I mean, I don't know how it works for you, but I mean, I don't I'm not always aware of my emotions, I should say, and maybe it's just how it is for normal people. But I also have I've showed you a lot of I did a lot of psychological testing because I knew a psychologist in the past, and so he just did these tests for me, um, just out of fun, more to like practice before he administered them to patients.
Yeah.
And so I got a lot of free testing, and it was kind of like a little theme throughout all of them. It kind of hints to maybe some nothing was ever wrong with the tests. Like they never said I was like nothing was bad.
Hmm.
But there's like always little hints that like maybe you're a little psychopathic. Just kind of a little hint.
Yeah.
And so there was nothing like diagnosable really, but it was like always kind of hinting to like some asocial pattern. And I'm not sure what that is, to be honest. But I feel like me feeling so much is definitely different than normal.
Hmm.
And it only happens when I'm attached to someone. It doesn't happen when I'm just myself. And I do kind of feel like I am a little bit different. Like I feel like I'm um, kind of like when you're with someone a lot, like you kind of take on some of their um, I don't know what it is, like their energy, or like you just take on some of their. I'm a little different when I spend time with a different person. Like I do things more that they like to do, or you kind of change a little when you're with someone.
Yeah.
And so I just feel like that's something I've been experiencing.
This is interesting because I mean earlier you described yourself as Placid Lake, and then
Yeah,
how
that's what
you're
I
getting,
used to
yeah,
be.
yeah, and that's how you
Hmm.
liked it, but you
Hmm.
just, unless I misheard or something, it seems like you kind of like the lack of placidity that you've been experiencing the last couple of years because you
I think I'm novelty
feel,
seeking,
yeah, okay.
and I like the difference. I like the
I see.
change,
Yeah.
and it's kind of exciting and fun. But then it can become tiresome after a while to
Yeah.
feel, to be feeling and to being anxious. So, but if at first it's fun, at first it feels exciting and new. And then as time goes on, you kind of just want to maybe go back to being a placid lake. But that
Well,
is how I normally would describe myself, or ordinarily.
yeah. And you also referenced a couple times like a real relationship. Like what in your mind is the difference between like a not real relationship and a real
I
relationship?
guess, I mean, I wouldn't say that this is not real, but it's not enough of what I need, I
Mm,
guess. It's not an official relationship. It's not, I mean, there's just a lack of intimacy, I suppose, is what it
uh-huh.
is. Maybe I need more vulnerability from that person.
Oh,
I think he does have maybe an issue with maybe uh, not dealing with his issues from his family, kind of um, ostracizing him. Maybe there's something there, you know, if he were more vulnerable, maybe that would help me. I don't know. I really honestly don't know, but I feel like maybe that could be something. Like I feel like there's not enough. Not that we're not open, but I feel like if there's something that could be helped if he was more open or more vulnerable,
yeah.
that maybe there's something there that's just a little bit more intimacy or a little bit more um, openness and vulnerability that I need to work on myself more.
Hmm.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, and so in terms of like the mechanism though, does it like do you think some of this openness or vulnerability would be like a signal to you, would have like a signaling effect that he feels safe and that therefore you can feel safe, or is the mechanism more like if he was a little bit more vulnerable or you felt a little bit more intimate, you would feel maybe a little bit more accepted? Like what is kind of the mechanism of like what would that do for you, his openness and vulnerability?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. It's hard to say. I just feel like that is if you point to something what's lacking, I think that's maybe what it is.
Yeah.
Is it, I mean, the same way you don't, you go to the supermarket and you're being checked out by the nice lady at the supermarket, you don't feel open enough with her to share everything and be like completely vulnerable.
I
But you
see.
talk about the weather and you talk about, and then in this friendship, I feel like really able to talk about anything. But I just can't quite get to where I need to be without having another level, whatever that is.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
I need another level of closeness, I suppose, to be able to fix myself. Um, that's kind of what I feel like I need.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard being in a place where you know that that could happen and aren't able to get it.
Yeah. Well, especially
It
I
can be a
mean
little
that,
tiring.
yeah, I see that that is like your belief, and it's always hard to know, right? It's hard to know,
Uh-huh. Of course.
yeah, the future, things that aren't true, like whether that is a possibility or is not a possibility. Does that feel like a little bit disempowering to think that you could just be kind of like you could resolve your attachment, your anxious attachment style if he just did XYZ, like he's kind
It
of
is
the
selfish.
gatekeeper.
Yeah, he is a gatekeeper essentially, to my emotions, really. But I also know that, I mean, if I did go no contact, for instance, I'd go right back to being a placid lake.
Mm,
So, I mean, I could always close the door and to my emotions
hmm.
and go back to being someone who experiences less of them, which is really actually quite wonderful.
Yeah,
Um,
it is wonderful.
uh, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I do want to, I, I'm not unhappy about anything. Like, I really feel like everything's been good. I've learned so much about myself, um, and felt a lot of pain and a lot of happiness and a lot of excitement, like a lot of different feelings that I don't ordinarily get to feel. And even if you're experiencing a bad emotion, it's kind of novelty seeking in a way to experience that. Even if it's not comfortable, it's kind of, you get something out of it. You get something out of feeling that
Mm,
that's just different from normal.
yeah.
And so it's been an interesting experiment, I suppose.
Yeah.
And
I
I don't really feel like I need to get rid of him. I don't feel like I need to. Well, that's the recommendation I've read on everything that's on every Reddit board or every, online forum. It always says to just no contact, just get rid of them. You'll never get better without it. And I don't feel like that. I don't feel like I believe in sobriety in general. Like I don't feel like I don't feel like, if you're going to be an alcohol, if you are an alcoholic, like I don't feel like being cured is not having any drinks. I feel like being cured is being able to go to a bar and have two drinks.
yeah.
That would be you're cured, but not, and then people say once you're an alcoholic, you're always an alcoholic, those kind of things. Or once you're a gambling person, you don't go to casinos or, that kind of thing. But I think really, truly the true metric of whether you're better or not, or you
Mm,
can trust yourself is, can you go to those places and not be an addict?
yeah.
Like, can you just do it, normally? I feel like that's really what I would consider healthy.
Hmm.
So for me, that would be being his friend and not feeling these deep feelings. Like that would be, for me, just being friends, like actually just being friends. That would be not having any other feelings or wanting anything more. It would be great. And that's what I would hope for.
Mm. Well, um, I wonder, is there anything like, is it possible to, I imagine that the feelings that you feel for him are kind of like a cocktail of feelings. Like there's some pleasant ones and there are like other notes in the cocktail that are like less pleasant.
Yeah.
Is it
I mean, the
possible?
anxiety is definitely unpleasant.
Yeah, right. I mean, if you could keep your feelings for him and then just take out the anxiety, would you prefer that or would you just prefer to kind of like have, just like no deep feelings for him? Go back to the, I guess,
I
to the
don't know. And
original.
ultimately, I don't get to decide. So that's, I don't know how I would feel. The deep feelings, I mean, what is the point of them if they're not going anywhere? I guess. Um,
Yeah, it's a really
I
good
mean,
question. Do you, and that's kind of, I guess, my suggestion, if I had to, is it okay to give you a suggestion?
yes, of course.
Yeah, my suggestion would be, especially right now that you're kind of like, post vacation, kind of thinking about things. I think that it's like a little bit easy to just kind of like, uh, I don't know what it is, like in our brains or something that just wants to categorize. In fact, do you know probably you don't. Funes Memorius. Let me even look up who it was. I want to say Funes the Memorius. It's by short story by Jorge Luis Borges.
No, I don't think I've heard of it.
Yeah, so I've never actually read it. Sorry, Borges. But Funes, yeah, Funes his memory. And so what one of my teachers kind of told me about this, one of my law teachers told me about Funes the Memorius is that he just it's either like suddenly or he gradually gets like this really perfect memory. And so, when he, for instance, like looks at two pencils or whatever, he doesn't need to think these are pencils and one's green and one's blue. He has such like an kind of an intricate memory and knowledge of this pencil that he doesn't have to categorize it at all as pencil in his mind. Like he doesn't have to simplify it. You know, he can just see it as it is.
Hmm.
And I guess one thing I've been thinking about the past now like year and a half is trying to be more like Funes Memorius, where I don't have to categorize things. I don't have to be like reactionary and think pencil. You know, I can just be like, you know, plastic, white, black, blue, letters, you know, just kind of like take things
Yeah.
as they are. And so I
But the
guess,
reason why we have labels, I
yeah.
mean, I feel like it's to simplify things or to make things, I sorry to cut you off,
No, go ahead. Yeah, I'm
but
done.
I mean, I just feel like, I know that this concept of like, the finger that points to the moon is not the moon, that kind of thing. Is that kind of
What? What does
in
that mean?
line?
Finger that doesn't points to the moon is not the
The
moon.
finger that points to the moon is not the moon. Like, I mean, like, it's pointing to something that's a reality, but it's not the
It's
reality. Like, kind of like that. Like,
oh, okay.
you
Yeah, the
know,
map is not the territory. Is the thing that
yeah,
I've heard.
something.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I feel like that's kind of what you're saying in a way.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like labels are bad. I just feel like they help us. Um, I don't know. They help us communicate about them, I guess.
Uh-huh. Sure,
Um,
sure, sure. I don't think the labels are bad either. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that I have heard you, is it okay to say something
yes,
about
of
you?
course, always.
I've heard you kind of use some words that I think could be unpacked, you know, like they're
Yes.
yeah, there, and so I wonder if you could kind of like delve a little bit kind of deeper into like, you know, like everything, you know, really just try to, and intuition will kind of guide you because I think it's almost like there's like a puzzle here. And
Mhm.
the puzzle, I don't think like the people, I agree with you, these people online about the limerence things being like, you just need to be done with it because, you know, when I think of that, people who are, and I'm not an expert or whatever, but I do kind of wonder, you know, like what does need to change inside somebody to where they no longer do have an eating disorder or they no longer are an alcoholic or you know like what would the shift have to be? What would the realizations have to be? What change inside of you would have to happen? And I think a lot of people think of sobriety for instance and maybe this is how you know, maybe we share this opinion or maybe we don't. I'd be interested to hear. But I have a sense that sobriety is seen as, you know, as long as you're not doing the thing, then it's kind of okay and you just kind of bury it and forget about it. You
Yeah,
know?
that's what I feel like it is.
Yeah. And so, and I'm like, you can just
Yeah.
kind of process through it. Like, isn't that better? Like, if you can process through it and kind of understand that your pelvis really is a free and independent moving thing, like, if you can kind of like expand and deepen more deepen than expand your awareness about different things, I think that you will see the puzzle pieces in a different way that will help. I guess is just kind of my intuition about it. And I one of my favorite stories is the guy who, and I think I just mentioned this in the last video too, the guy who figured out basically germ theory, right? Because he discovered, he noticed something. He noticed that the women who gave birth in the hospital, you know, and this was like in the late 19th century or whatever, had higher mortality rates, and the babies had higher mortality rates than women who gave birth not in the hospital. And so he was
Yeah,
like,
because they'd come from working in the morgue,
yeah, exactly.
touching
You
dead
know the
bodies and
story.
deliver babies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it
And so
Pasteur? I don't know who it was, but I mean, he
I
invented
don't
pasteurization. I don't remember who it was.
know. In fact, this guy, he lived and died in infamy or whatever because he was like, I think there's something about the corpses that
Yeah.
handling the corpses is the reason people are like, oh, you think they're like tiny little invisible creepy crawlies that are killing these babies? Like you're an
Yeah.
idiot. But I think we have to kind of like have like humility about things. We can't just kind of like come at it because we know that there are things that we misunderstand about the world. I'm not saying you misunderstand things about this. I'm saying that other people do, and you can't listen to them and kind of use their words and use their concepts because your concepts and your words, like I do think that it's like awesome that you found limerence and felt like okay, this applies to you, and I do think that it probably does. But like, what is like the nature of your feelings? what is the nature of your attachment style? Like it's one thing to kind of say these things, but like where is like the little where's the connection? Where's the connection
Yeah,
in your mind? And until you can kind of find that connection, I think it will continue to be a little bit of a puzzle, but I think you'll just kind of naturally find the connection. And I actually think too, is it okay to say like maybe another thought kind of
of course.
suggestion? So the thing
Hmm.
about Feldenkrais that was really interesting. So we did this thing where we sat on the ground and we had like our feet in front of us, kind of like they weren't crossed. So like my left foot was in my left arm hand and my right foot was in my right hand. And she was like, "Yeah, now lift up your foot. See if you can lift it up." And you're like trying to lift it up or whatever, and it's hard and it feels like your leg's so heavy and whatever. Then we do all these weird rolly things. You could probably just Google this exercise or something. Then at the end, she said, "Have do it again. Lift up your foot." And it was like so light. And I was like,
Huh.
what the freak happened? This is witchcraft, where you're just like, and it's not like we did a bunch of reps on lifting the foot. That's not how it got easier. It got easier by kind of like not doing that and kind of doing something different, like exploring kind of something adjacent, kind of
Yeah.
thinking about something adjacent. And I think that's kind of like my intuition about this suggests that that's another thing is that if you come at it directly, you'll probably kind of get kind of the same thoughts and the same uh, results or whatever else that you've been getting. And if you can kind of like really just try to open your mind to intuition and ask intuition, like how should you be coming at this instead to be able to understand it. You have like this true desire to understand what's going on with your feelings, with the relationship, with the nature of reality as it pertains to this whole situation. And I think intuition will tell you. And it might be something weird though, because we were like rolling on the floor before we were like able to lift up the feet. Like it was a literal like you're a ball trying to just roll around in a circle. And that felt really weird, but also it
I
worked.
I totally agree. Um, I do think that, and I think that is kind of what I was wanting to do is kind of more be able to feel that attachment coming and going
Mm.
more,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe try to somehow get used to it or somehow understand it better, at least to be able
Yeah.
to manage it better.
Yeah.
Um, that's kind of what I was really wanting. Um, but I don't know, but I do agree with what you're saying. I think that's true.
Yeah.
There must be another way. It's hard when I'm in the situation just to look at it in any other way. But if there is a way, I think that would help. A different way of seeing what's happening.
Yeah, seeing what's happening. So one thing that my little guided meditation guide does sometimes is, he'll ask when you feel these feelings, where do you feel them? How do you feel them?
Hmm.
Is it a tightness? Is it a warmth? Is it in your jaw? Is it in your chest? And it's really interesting because you're like, does it matter? But it's obviously not the questioning is not trying to get at an answer. The question is trying to get at an awareness of it.
Hmm.
And in understand having a greater awareness, there's also kind of a distance between, you realize that there's a part of you that's not experiencing the thing, that a part of you is just observing it. And that can kind of uh, you know I think we pronounce it thick not Han, the
Yes, Thich
Vietnamese.
Nhat Thich Nhat
Yeah,
Hanh. Yeah,
Thich Nhat Han, is that how we say it?
Thich Nhat Hanh. I think
Thich Nhat Han.
he recently died like a few years ago, I believe.
Yeah, sounds right. And one of his quotes I like, which is that clear or still water is clear, and trying to
Hmm.
find like a stillness, like it, and it doesn't mean don't feel the emotion, obviously, especially if you're trying to understand the emotion, you have to feel it, but to try to also have like part of you that's just observing the emotion and just kind of like in the same way that that guy's just observing like, hey, why are mothers and babies dying in the hospital, like the observation,
I
like the
actually really
truth will
like
set
him.
you free. Yeah.
Yeah, I've read a couple of his books. I think he has like Being Peace or something is one of
Yeah.
them I've read before, and he has like an exercise he does with people that I think is really just really good to like I don't remember exactly, but it's something like when you are hugging someone, like you imagine that they're dead,
Mm, wow.
and then you like realize that they're not dead, and then you realize that they're alive. Like you kind of like appreciate them more, I guess,
Yeah.
when you're able to like kind of go through those little stages of realizing that they're not going to be there. Like they're there now, but they're not going to be there. Like it's kind of an exercise he goes over in one of his books, but I'm like, that's really makes you appreciate people a little bit more, I think, if you do that exercise.
I think exercises in general are good because they're kind of requiring you to do something that you wouldn't otherwise do. And that requires you to look at the things that you otherwise would normally do with like new eyes too. So I heard once that Disneyland or like any Disney park, the cast members who are like dressed up as characters, I guess we shouldn't say they're dressed up as characters. But for instance, let's say, Minnie Mouse or whatever, is that they're trained to never pull away from the hug first.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever tried that?
I have a weird I have a weird thing about hugs actually.
Okay.
Um that's actually where one of this intuition things came from for me to run away was a bad hug.
Mm,
Um it was a bad hug. I didn't feel I felt something that was like run away.
wow. Mm-hmm.
From I guess I probably realized that I wasn't able to get what I was needing at that moment. It just
Mm.
was and I don't remember what his excuse was, but I mean that's interesting that you bring up hugging and but yeah, I
And this
mean
this would be what my
I
therapist
definitely
would
agree.
say. Yeah, don't practice these things with the actual person. Don't practice these things with the person in your life that's
Mhm.
that's kind of causing these things. Practice it with, you know, people.
Something tangential, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's got to be
Uh-huh.
tangential where you can just kind of practice and kind of like understand what it is. What's another one that I thought, oh, and saw this like in a tweet. I guess there's like a book about like people who are lucky often kind of choose these weird little rules intentionally to get them to do different things than they otherwise would do. The idea being like if you can act sometimes not like yourself, then you can have different experiences and kind of learn more about yourself. So kind of again this tangential thing. So for instance, one exercise that these people that are lucky, one of these people said when they go to like a party, they'll give themselves a rule like talk to everybody who's wearing red, so some arbitrary
Oh,
thing.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the point is that it's arbitrary. The point is that it's not coming from you. And then once you have the different experience of having it be the red arbitrary thing, you have a better perspective on like, well, how do I usually talk to people at parties? How do I usually choose? And so you have like a greater awareness that you are making a choice and it is based on
Mhm.
something. And then what is it based on?
That makes sense. That's actually kind of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, the hug thing too. You're aware I am making a choice about when do I end the hug.
Yeah.
But if you choose
I
something
mean, it's
arbitrary,
possible.
like it's always 3 seconds or it's always this,
Yeah.
then you realize, okay, yeah.
I guess there are too long of hugs. They can be creepy.
Hmm.
You know, you don't want to be creepy. Maybe they're waiting for you to release and you're waiting for them.
That would be crazy. In fact, I mean, I would love to
When does
experience
it
that
end?
though. Yeah, speaking of novelty seeking, it seems like this might appeal to you. One time though, it was right before the pandemic. I think it was the day before Disneyland closed for the pandemic. I saw this like toddler. She must have been like one, but kind of like late one because she was like walking around and stuff. And she was giving Minnie Mouse a hug. And first of all, she totally dead weighted Minnie Mouse, just like put all of her
Oh,
weight. And second of all, the hug lasted like a minute. She's just like basically falling asleep on Minnie Mouse, would not let go of Minnie Mouse. And Minnie Mouse, because she can't be the first to pull away. It's, it was yeah.
that's
So
funny.
yeah, sometimes like, and that's the point of the book about luck is like sometimes like really magical things or whatever can happen uh when you choose to kind of do things in a different way than you would normally do, because it's just exposing you to different things. Like you've already lived, the same day over and over again. Why not do something, why not eat breakfast at the night time and whatever, just try
Yeah.
different things. Yeah. And I think kind of
That makes
as
sense to
you,
me.
yeah, as you kind of have these like experiences, there's going to be, I don't know, intuition just thinks. I don't know. I don't know why.
I think I'm gonna send you this little exercise by Thich Nhat Hanh
Yeah, do it.
when I find it, and maybe you can, or maybe I'll put it in the link or something, or I'll like put it in the comments or something.
Yeah.
But I really feel like I don't remember where I found it, but I just thought it was like really a really good practice for anyone to use. But yeah, the thing about I've heard that they can't break character at all either, and they fire people for all kinds of reasons at Disneyland. It sounds like it's actually uh, I don't know how they get people to work there from what I've read. It's pretty strict. They're pretty strict on them, and I don't think they pay very well
Yeah.
either. But
I think for
people
some
really have a
people
passion for
though,
Disney
yeah,
World.
it's their dream. Well, seems like it's harder for Disney World to hire because they have so many parks and hotels and stuff. They just have so many more employees. Like in Disneyland in California, these people are like diehard fans that work there. They're like bleed
Yeah,
Mickey Mouse blood or whatever.
I used to work at a restaurant, and one of my coworkers there, she was obsessed with it, and that's what she wanted to do so bad. Now
Mm,
she is in, I think, Disney World
good for
down
her.
in Florida.
Love that
Um,
story.
is it?
Li-
Yeah,
living her passion.
but she's there. Yeah, she's there, and she's just living it, doing everything she wanted to do at Disney World, Epcot Center, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. You know what this Feldenkrais lady said too? I just had this idea pop into my mind is like there was nothing about Feldenkrais that was hard. Like in yoga, I was sweating, I was hot, I was like, I cannot continue holding this pose. There was like a lot of that going on. And in Feldenkrais, it was like easy, and the whole point of it is to be easy. It's like if it's hard, then you're doing it wrong, kind of thing. Like
Mm,
we're like a water flowing water or something. We're not going to go up the mountain. you
yeah,
know, but we will still flow. It's not like we're just going to stay stagnant. We're going to keep kind of finding like the path of least resistance to things. And that was really interesting too, to be like, yeah, like you could see just as much progress, even more progress in the Feldenkrais classes as the yoga classes. Was really interesting. So I think that's like an important thing to remember too, is that this is not necessarily, and she kind of made fun of people that go to the gym, and she's like, they are low intelligence people. I was like, oh, okay.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I usually am impressed with people that go to the gym. I'm like, oh yeah, good for you or something. But and she's like, she was interesting about it. She was like, if you want to do something like with your body, then like go play basketball or something. Don't just do like 10 reps or something. Like, what's the point of that? That's what she was saying was the low intelligence part of it. And she said, and
I
if you,
see.
yeah, and if you want to kind of like work on your body and have like greater facility with your body, then it doesn't really make sense to like just kind of target this one particular area and just kind of hammer it all the time. And so I think that's like this idea of Feldenkrais really reminds me of like the flowing water thing, where it's like don't get like stopped up thinking that this is the only path to do something, a direct path. Like there are many paths. It's a spaghetti of paths. There's like
Yeah.
thousands of paths or whatever, and not one of them is right. They're all just different paths kind of going to the same location, or if it doesn't go, then try another one or something. It was like this very like kind of liberating thought, where it was like we don't have to plan or think about it or just kind of keep hammering at something. Like we can just like in the openness is where we will find the stability, kind of.
That is a nice way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
I know you're talking about things deeper than this, but I mean, like, I know that just going on a walk outside on a trail is better for you than being on a treadmill
Yeah.
because there's just ways that your body balances little micro, I don't know, little micro muscles or something. I don't understand it, but something
Oh
about being outside
really?
on a trail, they said is better for you than just being on a treadmill all the time because your
Mm-hmm.
body, I guess, learns to adapt to all these um, not perfectly straight surfaces.
Mm-hmm.
And
Makes
it's even
sense.
better for your brain. I remember I listened to this on the Brain Science podcast. I don't know if you ever heard that, but it's actually really good. I listen to it frequently. It's Ginger Campbell. She's a physician out of Birmingham, Alabama, and she has a just a podcast called the Brain Science Podcast. I've listened to for like 20 years. But she
Nice.
talks about all kinds of different things. But one of them was perception, about where your body is in space, and about how much better it is to walk outside than in a gym.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something just practically true about what you're saying as well.
I can kind of see, like probably when you talk to your friend, do you feel like you're kind of in a flow state?
I think yes, probably. I mean, it's usually hours
Hmm.
because we're both driving. So it's usually, yeah, I'm assuming that's what it would be.
Hmm. Yeah. And I can kind of see, and when I said escapism, I don't mean like, oh, my life sucks. I need to like whatever. I guess kind of, I
But
think
it's
there,
something different
yeah.
and just like something kind of, it's more of the novelty seeking, maybe.
Hmm.
I know that I do have that. It's one of my personality traits.
Yeah. And I think the brain likes flow state the same way it likes cookies, like there's
Mhm.
certain things brain likes and doesn't like. But one thing that I've kind of noticed is, uh, when my brain likes music, loves music. And if brain is working really hard, on some legal contract or whatever 30-page thing, and it really needs to kind of like, we have to just sit down for the next 2 to 3 hours and just bang this out or whatever, then like I give it its favorite music. But now when I drive and I'm like, brain, you're doing hardly anything. It's just going to be silence.
Uh-huh.
So I wondered too, like your brain probably is influencing some of your choices and behavior with regard to your friend, and it's because brain probably feels awesome, talking about friend and thinking about friends and planning trips with friend and all these different things. But is it like, should brain be eating cookies like all the time or whatever? Like, is there a moment where
No, yeah.
yeah.
Have to snap your like people put rubber bands on their wrists and they snap them. Or now there's a
Mhm.
Pavlov watch where you can shock yourself
Wow.
when you find yourself drifting into something you shouldn't be thinking about.
Well, it's not like something you shouldn't be thinking about, but isn't it just kind of a balance, making sure
Sure.
and yeah. Like if I gym is good, but if I'm at the gym, like and I'm not sleeping anymore, is gym good? It's still good,
Yeah.
but it's just out of balance.
Well, it's an addiction. So I mean, like, that's what I think it is an addiction. So I mean, the goal is not to get rid of them. The goal is to just be normal, to find like a normal balance
I
of
think
not never thinking about them, but
yeah,
thinking about them.
exactly.
Mhm.
Still appreciating the fullness of that whole thing, everything that you like about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, keeping up your stamina, and keeping up your ability to appreciate that thing, because this is true for me. I know when I'm like eating Chick-fil-A, the first few bites of Chick-fil-A are
Oh.
better than the last few bites.
What? Wait, say that again?
The first few bites of Chick-fil-A
Uh-huh.
are better than the last few bites because I
Okay.
lose my attention span drifts.
Yeah. Okay,
I'm
I
no
see.
longer really in the moment experiencing it. So I think too, you know, that's another good thing about balance. Like balance can help us appreciate the things that we love more. It's not depriving ourselves. It's like giving more, honor to the things that we love. Like I'll eat less Chick-fil-A and in that way, I
Like it
actually
more.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's a treat,
Yeah.
instead of being just your everyday meal, which maybe it is for you.
Yeah.
Cheetos and Chick-fil-A.
Delicious. Diet Dr. Pepper.
Diet Dr. Pepper, that's right. For
Yeah.
me, it's polar. I've been talking about these
Yeah.
salsa drinks and what they put in them and what's really in there. Because it's not just, well, what is natural flavor? That's
Mhm.
I've always wondered. But we were talking about that earlier, and I really love polar seltzer. And I didn't realize, but the word seltzer, they don't pronounce it that way, but it's actually a city in Germany,
Oh.
and they pronounce it a different way. And anyway, that's where the word seltzer comes from. But there are like these natural springs that are have like lightly effervescent mineral water that comes out of the ground,
Hmm.
and I guess that's where seltzer came from.
There's one in Yosemite in the
Uh-huh.
Tuolumne Meadows, and I've drunk it, and but it has a high iron content, so it tastes like
Uh-huh.
carbonated blood.
Blood. Yeah.
You're like, okay, I don't know.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I haven't ever tried any of that. I've definitely tried some spring water that was coming out of a spring in the mountains,
Hmm.
but I've never tried like mineral water, I guess, that's been percolating through, I don't know, minerals, whatever is in there, iron, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's definitely interesting. I'd like to try someday. Maybe if I go to Germany, I'll go to Seltzer.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. And Evian too. There's like, but I don't know if that's sparkling. I think it's just still spring water.
Do you have a favorite water?
No.
I have a favorite water, but I don't know if they make it anymore. It's called Tynant water. It's like TY and there's like a little apostrophe NANT. And
Oh,
I think it comes from Great Britain. And I used to get it at World Market. Now I can't find it.
wow.
But it came in a blue glass bottle. It was just really good tasting water.
I hope that you find this again. Looks awesome. I just Googled it. Looks
Yeah,
like
the
they have
glass bottles are
imitators now.
amazing. They do. Oh, darn. I have seen some clear plastic bottles. I don't know if it's really them or someone else, but
Mm.
anyway,
Yes.
thank you so
I
much
know. Speaking of
for this
losing attention
conversation.
span.
I know we're talking about seltzer.
Yes, and I definitely want to thank you for being open as always. You know, to be willing to share these things and to share them not just with me but with more people and people that may have similar experiences or may not. You know, and this is exposing them to kind of different a different variety of
Maybe
humanity.
didn't know they were limerent. I mean, that's something I'd never heard of before.
Yeah, it's
So I
really
think it was
interesting.
helpful hearing it.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like people who are truly limerent, maybe sometimes, like for the alcoholic who, really is an alcoholic and should never go to the bar. Like
Hmm.
maybe for those people, like maybe ending contact is good if you are living in a place that's so divorced from reality
Yeah.
that, if that's your situation, I'm sure like maybe no contact is best. But I don't feel like that's my case. I don't feel like, I need to not go to the bar. I feel like I need to have less drinks.
Yeah, and that's kind of I think an interesting point though that you have made is that if the bad part about limerence is that you're divorced from reality, then it seems like you can just have limerence and get rid of the bad part and keep the good parts, you know? Like if you can just ground
Yeah,
yourself in reality while experiencing limerence, then is that, that seems like the best of all worlds or whatever.
I don't feel like I have, that the limerence that they mostly talk about, but I
Yeah.
definitely have that flavor of issue. So I'm not sure. I
Hmm.
mean, for someone who has limerence, maybe the best idea is to cut them out. If
Hmm.
you've made if you've been living in a fantasy world and you don't even want to know the truth about them because it'll upset the thoughts in your mind and not
Hmm.
make thinking about them as fun.
Yeah, and you have that addiction.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Interesting.
Then that would make sense, but I don't know. We'll see how things go.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear too. I'd love to hear again. All right.
All right, well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, and we'll chat to you soon.
Uh-huh. All right, sounds good. Bye.
Laters.